Hey everyone, it's John Philpott. If you're listening to this, it's because I am in Hawaii and unable to either get online at all or at the very least get some kind of a video connection. So I'm doing a video presentation of my collaborative research paper that I did with Kaylee, Sandra, and Janelle. So as a group, we created these analysis questions for our presentation. One, what are some of the causes of decreased mental well-being that both educators and students experience during online education? Two, what are some of the causes of stress being reported by students? Three, how did virtual learning contribute to decreased socialization? And four, what are contributing factors of teacher burnout? So this group, we've worked together in the past, either as a group of four or in smaller groups, and so I think that helped us really play off each other very well. We looked at this as a topic of interest because it's something that's affecting all of us, obviously, from working from home and learning at home. Some of us have children, and so we're kind of seeing the effects that that's having on the kids, having it happen to the kids' teachers or our coworkers for us that were in education. So it just kind of felt like the right fit. Um, we looked on when we were looking for different research material. From there, we kind of came down to the conclusion of looking at, burnout, desocialization, increased stress, and lack of physical activity to focus on. That was our start point. And then we split that up, and each of us took one as a start point, and we decided we would look for other information as we were researching. So for myself personally, I focused on increased stress, looking for both, but I ended up focusing on students. So this is our thesis statement. With COVID, more students and educators have had to work online, and that had had a tremendous impact on students and educators' mental health. What we found was those negative effects for the online learning was included increased educator burnout and student burnout, to be honest. Decreased socialization, which I think we've all experienced. Higher stress levels across the board. I think higher stress levels, honestly, for students and parents and teachers, and ducks, uh, and just and a lack of physical activity. Wasn't in our study, but there was a recent research study that was completed said that on average, this is an American study, and most Americans had lost 2 pounds, or sorry, gained 2 pounds a month on average. We did, however, also find some positives just in regards to the development of 21st century competencies and allowing educators to kind of build some deeper connections with students in some situations. In others, we found the opposite. So to reiterate here, this is our findings for our research paper. I won't repeat myself, but I'll pause for a minute for your review. Sandra's focus was on increase in educator burnout. And this is a first example of a idea that we had of A equals B and B equals C, therefore A should equal C. And what I mean by that is because COVID is such a new topic, there's a lot of research, but there's not all research. In this situation, Sandra was able to find some research in regards specifically to educator burnout being caused in COVID, but she also found some interesting research talking about just how increased exposure to smart devices leads to burnout. And that happened in that research, though, was from 2019. So after some discussion, we decided that that was worth also adding into the paper because we know that there has been that increased usage of smart devices for both for students, for teachers, for parents, everyone, pretty much, and that it's very likely that that is part of causing that increase in educator burnout, and again, burnout for others as well. And we do mention this in our limitations of our report. The subject of decreased socialization was reviewed by Kaylee, and this is another strong example of A equals B, B equals C, so the A equals C. We found a lot of information about causes for decreased socialization. We recognize that a lot of those causes, those were things that are being experienced by people in COVID times. And therefore, COVID should be causing a decrease in socialization. And in this one in particular, anyone who is living right now, um, anyone who has children, anyone who has friends and family has experienced a decreased socialization. I don't know how they're not. So it's one of those, we know it to be true based on experience. Kaylee did find some research specifically to the subject, but we found a fountain of information letting us know that there's definitely was causes that exist right now were at fault for decreased socialization for everyone. My primary focus was on the higher level of stress in students. And in this one here, I I want to say I actually kind of was lucky. I had just started doing research on this topic, and it happened that a company called Challenge Success, a nonprofit, was working with NBC News, and they actually released a really interesting series. There was a research paper and study, and they also had a newspaper articles and TV segments talking about kids under pressure. And the study was a look at student well-being and engagement during the pandemic. So I was able to get from that a lot of the initial research for higher levels of stress and the findings that not just that it was high levels of stress for all students, but how certain groups, female students, people of color, people of, from the LGBTQ community were having stress at higher levels than others. And that online students were having higher levels of homework over a course of a week and on the weekend compared to students that were still learning in schools. So I found some other research on the topic, but for me, that was one of those like sitting at the house and seeing the news come up on the screen and going, oh, this is exactly what I want to learn about. So it was kind of a awesome moment. Lack of physical activity was Janelle's primary focus. So one thing to add here is while we each had our primary areas that we focused on, how we helped each other was to go through each other's writings from two different standpoints. One, just to kind of give advice, look through, see if there's like, is this a little lacking in research? Is there something else you consider? Is there something else we found while we were doing our own research? Just, helping from a grammar standpoint, but also to look at the paper across the board to see if we found like inconsistencies in the way we phrase things. The best example I can use being, you might say college, another person says university, and another person says post-secondary education. So trying to make sure the research paper, if one person's reading it, it feels like it was a concurrent story as opposed to a whole bunch of individual articles put together. The subject of decreased relationships between teachers and students is information that I added based on what I had found in that NBC news article and TV session. So it's something I thought would be important to add, and mainly because I noticed it between my children, especially my middle schooler and his teachers, that he just wasn't getting the same relationship. It was stressed compared to what he had the year before when he had, a teacher that he saw every day. So I thought it was an important component to add to our research paper. Finally, 21st century competencies. I feel like this was partly Sandra wanting to kind of show that it wasn't all doom and gloom, that there were some implementations that happened. I think we will come out of the COVID pandemic stronger on the on 21st century skills because we were kind of all forced to work from devices for a year and work on remote learning. As someone working on the corporate side, I definitely feel that we all have a better appreciation for the coworkers who work from another country and have to call in all the time. And what I'm hoping is, and Sandra alludes to here, is just the idea of teachers were definitely motivated, but if they have the resources, and will we have the resources when everyone goes back to school, or will it be dropped aside? My feeling is it'll really depend on the school board. So these are limitations for the research paper. The primary one being the one I mentioned before about some limited information due to COVID being current. But other issues we came across, largely research was limited to the US, and likely that's just that's a money thing more than anything, them having the budget for doing the research. There was no focus on public or private education. There was no focus on children or educators with exceptionalities. We found some research again about how some minority groups were affected more than others, which I think is just kind of unfortunately par for the course when problems arise. And then there's, as I mentioned earlier, there was limited research on desocialization, and that's where we had to take into account the A should equal C scenario. These are synthesis questions. Number one, what can individuals do to increase the negative impacts of COVID-19 on mental health during teaching and learning in an online environment? Number two, what are some of the skills and competencies that are being developed through virtual learning today that might continue to prevail moving forward? And number three, what are some benefits or disadvantages of pivoting to virtual learning versus other models of learning? So in conclusion, online teaching and learning leads to drinking excessive amounts by educators, parents, and adult students, a lack of pants, or at least a lack of fancy pants, and in some cases, extreme boredom.